This is something that I first heard about and asked myself, is that really a thing? And that's the sign of a good unboxed therapy. Now, I'm no scientist. I know it's hard to believe, but there's something I do know about this machine right here.
Okay, let me take a guess there. It's being promoted by one of the most vapid, uninformed shills on YouTube. And for anyone who thinks, that's kind of harsh, I'm not the only one to think it. If you scroll down and look at the most upvoted comments, that moment you realized all of his videos are ads. And it's a dehumidifier with a filter.
And that is the fact that it can make pure, filtered drinking water from the air. Let that sink in for a minute.
Well, let me give you an alternative perspective. I am a scientist. I don't have to let it sink in for a minute because it's a dehumidifier. And I'm not actually that awfully impressed with a dehumidifier.
Let that sink in for a minute.
Oh boy, this guy who waxed lyrical about this amazing water from air device.
Fancy. Whoa. Whoa. These are the various filters here. That's pretty wild. It's pretty amazing to actually experiment with. Water from nothing, water from the air, Ecolo Blue, also cold. And I gotta say, it's pretty amazing. I'm drinking something that was trapped in the air, which is now in my glass. Check them out. This is not the only machine they make. And who knows? This might be the future of water right here. I thought it was cool. I think you might think the same.
Naturally, just like with any unboxing video, he was diligent to make sure that he explored all aspects of the device. Like, say, for instance, how it's one of the most expensive, high-maintenance ways of getting drinking water.
Now, it should be obvious that this thing uses electricity, so it's not like you're getting this water for free. You're having to pay to run this machine. So there is a cost associated with that. A couple of other cool things about this particular machine.
Whoa, steady, Tiger. You glossed right over the bit where it costs 100 times more than getting your water out of a tap. Plus, it's a lot safer to get your water out of a tap. But don't worry, he comes back to it later in the video. I'm sure he's going to explain it all then.
From a cost to performance ratio, this isn't like magical. There's still a cost associated with it that you should be aware of. But I think as an alternative, as a backup, and to service places that might not have access, or to avoid the abundance of bottles of water.
I'm beginning to think you're not going to get around to the fact that it costs about 100 times as much as regular tap water. Ah, yeah.
There's moisture in the air. If you could only capture that, you'd have all the water you ever needed.
And spoiler alert, he doesn't. But he does turn the massive vice that you have to run this thing with stacks of filters.
Look, it's got an air filter on it.
So, sure, there's one thing I'm going to have to check and make sure it's clean periodically or replace it.
Sediment, pre-carbon.
Okay, so what are my risks of being poisoned if I don't replace that on time? And how much do they cost? And how long do they last?
Membrane, mineral filter, post-carbon. By the time your water is through here, there's nothing left in it that could be a contaminant.
Seriously, you now have to make sure that there are 7 filters that are up to date. Otherwise, you might be drinking contaminated water. That's just what everyone wants out of their free water from air device. I'm sure that's nothing to do with unboxing channels basically being giant commercial day shopping adverts. Actually, it's one of the things that I agonized for a long time over about putting Amazon affiliate links on this channel. Mainly because I'm a scientist, not a salesman. I don't want to be that guy who tells you that things are brilliant, always brilliant and amazing, and you should buy it. Which is why you've never seen a paid promotion or sponsorship on this channel. It's all done directly by people who support this channel through Patreon. So, why do I actually now have Amazon affiliate links on this channel, I hear you ask? Well, after about 10 years of basically recommending to people what I thought would be the best thing for them to buy in terms of, I know, starting out with telescopes or something. Well, after 10 years of basically recommending people what I would suggest to them, you know, without making a single penny out of it. I decided, hell, why not just do exactly the same, but with Amazon affiliate links? But that's not quite this guy. This guy is impressed by everything. Basically, if he's reviewing it, it's amazing. It's a game changer. So let's take a look at another of the products that he was reviewing.
It'd save time, okay, sure, I don't have to go to the coffee shop, I get it. They say it'll pay for itself in 2 weeks. How has this thing not come into my life?
Let you in on a little secret, Marge. The right house is the house that's for sale. The right person is anyone.
Ooh, that's a mug right there. Oh, and that's the magic.
Now, bear in mind, all this is basically a thermal pack that you can put your drink in, right? That's all there is to it. Let's see how he tries to promote this.
Look at that. Another chamber. Oh, this one comes off too. Holy smokes. Wow, would you look at... That thing is the real deal. That's a game changer. Oh my goodness, I might switch over completely to ice. Forget about hot coffee. Who needs it? It's the summer. Exceeds my expectation. Wow. We open it up. Check that out. Wow.
Wow, that's amazing. Just look at that. Except now I can tell you this guy's either the biggest idiot on the planet or the biggest shill. So in order to explain to you why you need the most amazing, awesome, hyper chill, something that you just have to have in your life, he's got to explain to you why just putting ice into your coffee wouldn't do it.
Now, I have some ice here. If you think you're just going to go ahead and add ice to hot coffee.
Oh, you're going to crash and burn so hard.
Let's go ahead and brew one of these and I'll show you.
Now, before we come on to the point where I thermodynamically destroy this guy, let's just take a little moment to reflect that when he is using the hyper chill, let's see how much ice he puts in his glass then.
To this glass right here. Now, they recommend you pour it over ice. If it's just hot coffee onto ice, it'll melt the ice instantly. So the hope here is that the ice remains frozen even after I've poured the coffee on top of it.
Cool! So we only need to fill our glass halfway up with ice when we're using the hyper chill, and compare that to how much ice he puts in his glass to cool down boiling water.
And add ice to hot coffee. Let's go ahead and brew one of these.
You see, the way that you make Americano with a coffee machine, with this exact machine, is first of all you make an espresso shot, and then you add hot water to it.
Ground crew, drop that into the machine. Now, we're going to go ahead and brew an Americano. An Americano is kind of like the lungo shot that we just did. It's essentially going to add up to 2 shots, but we're only going to do 1 shot of espresso, and then we're going to do 1 shot of hot water. So we're just going to mix espresso with hot water.
You got that? You get your espresso and you add hot water to it, diluting it, you know, to your preference. So if you want chilled coffee, you don't first of all fill the cup up with as much hot water as you can.
Look, I put a giant chunk of ice in there. Ice, it's melted in there. They're gonna melt so fast because of how hot the substance is. All you're gonna get is watery, lukewarm coffee. It's no good, trust me, I've tried this in the past.
I'm gonna push extra doubt on that one. Because if you had tried it, you would have worked out that it works pretty well. Allow me to demonstrate. Cool. So, what you got here is some water in a kettle. Let's get that on. You got some water in an ice bath. So all of this should be at 0 degrees Celsius, but it's kind of hard to tell what the hell's going on there. So I'm going to put an overlay on, which is the thermal overlay. This is the overlay from the thermal camera. In fact, I'm actually going to go entirely over to the thermal camera at this point. So obviously with the thermal camera, the brighter it is, the hotter it is, and if I move the cursor over it, it tells you the temperature. So you just about see the top of the water in there is freezing point. The thermal cameras aren't perfect, right? So for instance, here you see it says that the surface is at 18, but here you're clearly looking at a bit of a reflection. So things that are reflective really aren't so good with thermal cameras. So the metal here is not so good. It doesn't give you a true temperature. So if I do that, you should be able to see the warm handprint. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to get some cups, and the reason we're using these polyethylene cups, we switch back to the visible for a second. Right, the polyethylene cups are clearly not transparent to visible light, but they're actually pretty transparent in the infrared, so you stick your fingers in them and you see what's going on. And the other thing that's great about these polyethylene cups is they've got very low thermal mass. So if I put, say, 50 grams is about the same mass as a Mars bar. It's also the volume that we're going to get out of this syringe. So 50 mil, you know, I fill it up to this mark here, and I put 50 mils in, which is 50 grams. What I'm going to do in the first instance, whilst the kettle is boiling, is I'm going to put 50 grams of my ice water here in each of those 2 cups. Now I'm going to sort of squirt this in and out a few times just to more or less get the temperature of the syringe down to the same temperature as the water. So when I put 50 grams of water in there, it should reflect the temperature of the water, which is about 0 degrees Celsius. It might be off by a degree or 2, like I said. Thermal cameras aren't perfect like this. Good. So now we got 2 cups. So now we've got boiling water in the background, which it says is at 96 degrees. And here we're at 2.5 degrees, here we're at 2.5 degrees. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my syringe, which had ice cold water on it, and I'm going to put 50 grams of boiling water into it. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to rinse it a couple of times just to get the syringe up to the right temperature. Now I'm going to take 50 grams of boiling water. There we go. So 50 grams of boiling water and 50 grams of ice cold water should give you an overall temperature of 50 degrees. So yeah, if you mix water at about 0 degrees and water at 90, it says 90 is nice boiling, you end up with water at 50 degrees. Super! So, what would happen if I were to do that exact same experiment, but let's say rather than taking water at ice temperature like this, I actually took 50 grams of ice like that. So let's do that. So here I've got a little balance, and so I'm going to put my cup on there, and we're going to find a lump who's about 50 grams. That's maybe about 50. That's 65. A bit on the heavy side. That lump is perfect, 50 grams. 50.3 grams to be exact. So now we've got our lump at 50.3 grams, and we're going to add 50 mils of boiling water to it. So in fact, let's do these side by side just so you can see the effect this has. So first of all, I'm going to get 50 grams of boiling water and add it to this boy. Beautiful. So that should come out at 50 degrees again, which he does. Beautiful. Now let's do exactly the same thing, but with the ice. And what temperature do you think this is going to come out at? So again, there we go. 50 grams of boiling water. Onto the sea ice. Good. Right. So, the only difference here Right? Both have exactly the same amount of liquid in them. Here I added water at 0 degrees. Here I added ice at 0 degrees. So the temperature is already down to 20 degrees. And we're almost getting to the point where I have to speed this on its way by... Yeah, you see the ice still melting away in the top there. So let's just give him a bit of a whisk, help him on his way. We done? Not quite yet. Boom, there you go. Awesome. So this one, who ends up at about 10 degrees, was done by adding solid water, ice at 0 degrees Celsius. And this one that ended up at 50 degrees was from adding the liquid water at 0 degrees Celsius.
Exceeds my expectation. Wow!
So the only things that you need to know to actually calculate this exactly are the energies of heating up a unit mass of water by 1 degree Celsius and the energy for turning 1 gram of ice from ice at 0 degrees Celsius into water at 0 degrees Celsius.
The substance is, all you're gonna get is watery, lukewarm coffee. It's no good, trust me, I've tried this in the past.
So it really is quite incredible. One of these is really, really warm to the touch. This is like, well, it's hotter than me. It's hot. Oh, that's like, you know, a very pleasant tea type temperature. And this one's like a bloody ice bath. You know, this is 10 degrees.
That thing is the real deal. That's a game changer. Oh my goodness, I might switch over completely to ice. Forget about hot coffee. Who needs it? It's the summer.
Cool. So let's just say I want to make the perfect iced coffee. So I need to know when I have to stop adding hot water to it and start adding ice, such that the final temperature of the drink ends up at 0 degrees Celsius, the same temperature as ice. And for this, I need to know two numbers. The amount of energy that I have to put in to 1 gram of water to heat it up by 1 degrees Celsius. And it turns out that's 4 joules. Okay? And there's another number we need to know here. That's how much energy I have to put in to, say, 1 gram of ice to turn it into 1 gram of water. So we're going to call that melting. And that's 334 joules per gram. So it takes a crazy amount of energy to melt ice compared to heating up water. So in fact, if I imagine that I had 1 gram of ice and I add 334 joules to it, all that does is turn it from ice at 0 degrees Celsius into water at 0 degrees Celsius. Now let's imagine that I add that same amount of energy to water at 0 degrees Celsius. Well, that's going to heat that water up by 80 degrees. It's enough energy to take water at 0 degrees Celsius and almost turn it into boiling water. That's how much energy it takes to melt ice, which is why ice is fantastic at cooling down drinks. So, let's just say that in the first instance, we're going to have ice water. And I'm going to take that as my baseline. So that's going to be 0. So if I have 100 grams of water at 0 degrees Celsius, I'm going to say that has 0 energy. And that's just going to be my baseline. So if I now add to it hot water, and I'm going to add 100 grams of, this is going to be grams. So now I have 100 grams of hot water, and it's going to be at 100 degrees Celsius. Well, the energy it's got is we've got 100 grams, and we've heated that up by 100 degrees, and each time we did that, it took 4 joules of energy. So we've got a total energy. So here we're going to have total mass Well, the total mass is simply the mass of ice water plus hot water. So we've got 200 grams. The total energy is simply the energy of the ice water, which is 0, plus the energy of the boiling water, which is that. That's the total energy. And now if we want to know how much energy we have per gram, it's that many joules divided by that many grams. That's joules per gram. Well, and we know that it takes 4 joules to heat it up by 1 degree Celsius. So that's the temperature. That's the average temperature at the end. Average temperature. Beautiful. So now I should find that if I add, say for instance, 50 grams of ice water, it automatically scrolls through and now gives me the new average temperature. So this just now tells me, no matter how I mix the waters, what the final temperature is going to be. Okay, so let's go back to 100 and 100, and I could change the temperature here as well. Cool. So let's do now exactly the same thing again, apart from now, rather than being ice water, it's actually going to be ice. So the first thing that we've got to do to our ice is melt it. And we have 100 grams of ice, and each one of those grams of ice takes that much energy to melt. So we've actually, we have to put in a colossal amount of energy just to melt the ice. So the total energy in the ice system is that. And now the total energy of the system is that much. So according to this, if I have 100 grams of ice and 100 grams of boiling water, and I mix the two together, the average final temperature should be about 10 degrees Celsius, which is about what it was, you know, within the limits of the thermal camera. So from this, I can tell you exactly how much ice I have to add. That's this one. This is the grams of ice I have to add to my boiling water to get its final temperature to 0 degrees Celsius. That's this boy here. So if I change this to 110 grams or something, we're getting there, 115 grams. So basically you'll have to add slightly more ice to boiling water to get its temperature down to 0 degrees Celsius. But if we would turn this into something more realistic, that if rather than it, say, for instance, being boiling water in our coffee, it was water at 80 degrees Celsius, this was the temperature, bear in mind, let's put the temperature, this is temperature, should have been in there all along. If our water was at 80 degrees Celsius, then an equimolar mixture of water at 80 degrees Celsius and ice would actually get you a temperature of basically frozen water. You wouldn't melt all of the ice by doing that. So if you wanted your perfect iced coffee and wanted 0 waiting involved, it's simple. Rather than putting 1 shot of espresso and 1 shot of boiling water into your coffee, you put 1 shot of espresso and equal mass of ice, and that should get you your iced coffee instantly.
Or maybe in terms that an idiot would understand, right? When you were using the hyperchill, you had to fill your glass about half up with ice.
To this glass right here. Now, they recommend you pour it over ice. If it's just hot coffee onto ice, it'll melt the ice instantly. So the hope here is that the ice remains frozen even after I've poured the coffee on top of it.
If you'd have just put your coffee straight into that, it would have been at exactly the same temperature as when you used the hyperchill. It would have been quicker.
It saved time, okay, I get it. 60 seconds for a small or medium coffee. Swirling it can expedite the cooling process.
It would have been cheaper.
They say it'll pay for itself in 2 weeks.
And it would have required less effort in terms of, first of all, having to freeze this thing.
It sat in the freezer, now when you...
And secondly, having to clean it
afterward.
Now what do I do with this? Every so often, rinse it out.
So that's why ice is so good at cooling things down. And just so you know, this is one of the many bizarre properties of water, that it takes this large amount of energy to melt ice into water, and it takes an even larger amount of energy to take water in the air and condense it into liquid. Which is why dehumidifiers are such a bad idea for getting water from the air.
Let that sink in for a minute.
And this is also maybe why you shouldn't trust someone who goes all When Harry Met Sally when he's trying to sell a product that he is reviewing on his channel.
Wow! That thing is the real deal. That's a game changer.
So if you enjoyed that, drop a like on this video. And of course, hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on new uploads. And as ever, if you really enjoyed this video, you can support this channel directly through Patreon. And thanks for watching.